Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to Simple and Procedural. So today we're going to be designing something like this. In theory, this is called a Dyson Sphere. This is not a scientifically accurate representation by any means, but it's a cool looking object. And like we all love sci-fi stuff, they look cool, they look nice. And we're going to be designing something like that today. So let's actually look into Gribbles first. So what is a Gribble? If you look up images, in fact, this image is probably like the perfect image. So you have a box and then you start to add details to it, something like this. And we've all seen this. This is very popular in 3D industry, in sci-fi movies. Sorry. In fact, you see a lot of these in Star Wars, for example. All these spaceships. Even if you have Death Star surface probably would be better. But yeah, like the surface is made up of all these tiny modules. They look really cool. And we're not going to be designing anything too complex today, but if you do want to do that, you can just like design modules and just scatter them on your surface. They're pretty cool. I like Gribbles. So you can also look up like things like this, Pinterest. They're pretty cool. There's a website called windmillart.net. If you go to the products, there's something called Jace Placement. It's a pretty cool tool. It gives you textures. We're not going to be using this one, but as I was setting up the project, I kind of remembered this is also a pretty cool tool to have. So one downside to using this one, you need a lot of resolution because you're working with displacements, and when you zoom in, you're gonna be able to see the flaws in your object, because no matter how much resolution you have, at some point the texture is gonna break. So yeah, just a heads up for that one. But for like small objects, for adding details to the surface, this is a perfect tool, and it's available for free. So really nice. So let's talk about Dyson Spheres. So this is the definition by Wikipedia. A Dyson sphere is a hypothetical megastructure that completely encompasses a star and captures a large percentage of its solar power output. Now, when you look up images for a Dyson sphere, essentially you have a star in the center and you have a structure around it. What it does in theory, it's usually like a big mirror. So the light goes crazy inside and you can harvest this energy. And you can see a lot of different looks for it. Some of them are cooler. For example, this one. This is a really cool image. This is not actually scientifically accurate because you shouldn't like make a full structure around it, because if something hits this structure, like the whole thing is going to collapse on the star and it's going to be destroyed. So something like this is probably more scientifically accurate, or even something like this. It's not as cool as the other ones, but this is what probably is going to work, and it's very similar to what we'll be designing. If you want to learn more about Dyson Spheres, you can look up the channel Kurzgesagt, or in a nutshell. It's a German word. It means in a nutshell. And there's a video, Dyson Sphere, how to build a Dyson Sphere. It's a really cool video. They have great animations. It's 2D animation, but it's really cool. Black Hole Bomb, it's also really cool, and you have stellar engines. I would recommend watching all these three. They actually have a playlist, universe and space stuff, and they have a lot of videos there. I would recommend watching these. They're pretty cool. So let's talk about what I've designed. You can see a lot of different images in here. Like I really love this one. It's the thumbnail, but in the blue version. You can just remove everything around it, add a lot of volumetrics around it, create something like this. It's also pretty cool. Let's take these down. Yeah, so this is also another look. Like you can see the beam, you can see different styles for the beam. In fact, you can see like we have both versions in here. I think it's pretty cool. Like I like the beam look. I also like the crazy look that everything is just looks like it's collapsing. But we're gonna be designing probably this one because the other one is actually pretty simple. You just need to mirror it. But I'm gonna like talk about it. Just be thorough. So let's talk about the project setup, and then we're gonna start from scratch. So we have a sphere as the sun. Is pretty simple. We have our rings. We have a smoke simulation. You can see in here. Let me disable thing. There we go. So this is our smoke. It's pretty low res. I didn't need anything like too big. Just wanted to add a tiny bit on top of it, make it look cool. We have stars in the background. We have our trails, and we have our asteroids. So everything is just pretty simple, nothing too difficult. And when you render it, you get something like this. So these are our trails. There's a little bit of volumetrics around it. I'm also using the bloom from Redshift, so it's kind of making it look cooler. And yep, and these are just procedural shadings, which we're gonna do next. Okay, let me place it on the second monitor so I can also follow along from there. And let's set up our project. Okay, I'm gonna place down a geonode, call it sun. We just need a sphere. I'm gonna add a little bit more in here, maybe like 15, something like that. It doesn't really matter. You can actually bump it up to like 50 if you want. It's not really that important. And we're gonna leave it at this for the time being, but we're gonna actually come back to it because we're gonna need some stuff with this one. Okay, let's place another geonode. There's gonna be our rings. Jump inside. We're gonna create a tube. Now we don't need end caps for it. And let me change this to ghost other objects so we can see the other one as well. For the radius, I like to set these to 1. I don't like the new one. It comes with 0.5. I get that sometimes it makes more sense, but I don't really like it. So radius scale, I want to set this to 1.4 probably, something like this. Yeah, looks pretty good. Maybe 1.5. We're gonna play with these. It doesn't really matter. And for the height, let's bring it down to 0.2, I guess. Maybe we'll change it. I don't know. And let's add a little bit more columns. Okay, so very cool node now. Before that, let's actually extrude it. That's important. So 0.1 and output back. Okay, cool. So very cool node. If you don't have side effects labs, you should definitely add them. You can just update toolset, download it. It's free. It's amazing. And labs lot subdivision. Cool. So this is a really good node. Now you're not seeing anything because minimum lot size is too big. So let's go to 0.005 probably. There you go. Now we're starting to see cool stuff. I like to bring this down to like 4 because like when it's too much, might be a little bit distracting. Also, like you can bring the size down, but when you bring the iterations down, it's kind of cooler, I think. Yeah, this is pretty nice. I like it. And I mean, honestly, we're pretty much done right now. That's what we're gonna be doing. But let's take it a little bit further. I like to add a copy and transform in here. Let's say 4. I'm gonna make them slightly bigger. So this is what we get. And you can actually rotate them around if you want. But what we're gonna be doing is assign frame, and that's assign frame. Cool. So now you go through the timeline, they're going to be moving around. I'm going to actually change my timeline to be 720 frames because it's a nice loop. Also, I like to divide this by 2 so it's slightly slower. Okay, that's pretty nice. Like this is the speed. What I like to do right now, or maybe even let's actually divide it by 4. Maybe that would be nicer. 4, even a little bit slower. I like it to be pretty slow. That's cool. And as you can see, loops. I like to actually add a couple values in here. So I add like 90. I don't want it to have like I don't want it to be like this, like horizontal. One thing to say, if you're planning on animating it, maybe the horizontal look is actually nice, because then you can have like two objects down and bottom, and whenever they are horizontal, you can shoot a beam from it. That usual sci-fi stuff. I wasn't really looking for that look, but that's something you can do. So let's add 90 in here. I will add 110 in here. These are the values I've worked before, and they worked, and I like the look, so I'm just using those. There we go. So now, yeah, it never lines up, and I like it, but it's not looped now. It doesn't really matter. I like it. I'm not really going for anything looped, so it's fine. If you're planning on looping it, you can just add to the timeline, figure it out from there. Maybe just remove these. I think if you don't have the divisions, it would probably be looping around. Is it? It is. Yeah. Probably the division by 4 is what's I'm not taking that away. I like this. I like the placement, so I'm still gonna add the 4. You can just extend your timeline, and that's fine. And maybe make them a little bit bigger. There you go. So I also like to add another transform, because if you look at this, this one is always staying at its place. So what I like to do is just adding assign frame, again divide it by 4 and add 25 to it. So now this is also moving around, which is nice, and you can actually have this before that as well. It doesn't really matter, kind of results in the same thing. I'll keep it like this. Okay, cool. So let's do something real quick. So attribute float, oh, what did I write? Attribute float adjust. Now, if you're not familiar with what I'm doing, you might be, you might not. Let me actually add a poly extrude. So what I'm planning on doing now, I want to extrude my polygons, but I don't want them to be extruded in the same amount. So if I just change this right now, you can see it's just like the same amount of extrusion. I'm gonna uncheck this to individual elements. It's not gonna show me anything right now. If you go to local control, you have a distance scale called Z scale. This is an attribute. You need to enable this. And now when you place this attribute float adjust in here, type Z scale, and also switch this to primitive. This is a primitive attribute. Now it's set to 0, so we're not seeing anything, but if you come here, go to random, and there you go. Now you're seeing something really cool. So just to recap, if I don't know if it was too fast or something, maybe you're not used to this thing. So attribute float adjust, just change it to Z scale. In fact, if you set it to primitive and hit this marker button and switch this to be like random, there you go. You can see different values. If it's set to point, it's gonna look like this. So essentially it will create values on the points. So it will be interpolating this, but if you set it to primitive, it looks correct. And when you just connect this into your poly extrude, use the Z scale, it will look nice. Okay. So you can play with the value if you want to make it bigger or smaller. I kind of like the smaller look, so 0.05 probably, something like that would be a nice look. Maybe 0.1 even, because 0.1, not 0.0. Maybe it's a little bit too big. Yeah, I don't like it. 0.05 was working better for me. Maybe even 0.04. Yeah, that's nice. And probably your normals will be messed up now, so let's just add normals. Moving around, you can actually add your normals like down here. Should be fine. Normals are pretty cheap to calculate, so don't worry about it. Now, what I'm gonna do is actually I want to add a little bit a cool element to it. So if you check out the reference I'm using, actually some panels are missing. I like that. So I'm gonna add another labs tool, labs random selection. It's an amazing tool. I love it. Let's just uncheck the scale in here. Now, if you set it to primitives and then just bring it up, you can see we're selecting some of them. The tool can actually remove them for you, so you don't need to, do anything crazy. Just hit delete selected, and you can control it. I would say something like this is actually 0.6. And now technically we're done in here. I'm gonna add another poly extrude. Poly extrude. Just extrude it a tiny bit, 0.005 maybe. Why is it going crazy? Weird. Probably because of that. Yep. And yep, output back. But they are actual panels, and maybe we can now actually make it bigger as well. This looks cool. I like it. And you can go through your timeline. It's a little bit slow right now, so you might want to, you know, bring it down, bring down the numbers. It's fine. Not, you know, complex. So we're gonna leave it at this, but we're actually gonna come back to revisit this part of the setup. Okay, let's create another GeoNode. Now what we're gonna be doing now is a very simple smoke simulation. We have our sun. We want some stuff going around it. It would make it look cool. I like the look. Like if you look at the image, you can see like not the trails, but there are some stuff going around it. Maybe it would be more visible. Image like this. Yeah, there. So you can see like there's a little bit of smoke around this. In fact, if I go back to my versions, yeah, this is like I like this look because it's super dark. Like the smoke is not even visible. It makes it look like maybe it's a dying star, something like that, you know. And you can do all crazy stuff here. You can do like a RBD simulation on your star, so it looks kind of cracked. Maybe the star is actually collapsing. There are a bunch of cool things you can do. Let's place this, but we're gonna jump inside the sun actually. Create a null. Call it out smoke source. Copy this. I'm gonna come to smoke. I'm gonna place an object merge, and I'm gonna paste this in here. If you don't like it, you can actually dot it, so it's not like make it relative, but since you know it's connected to something outside, it's better this way. And I usually like to turn on this show option down in view, show for selected nodes. I don't like to have it on for everything, but like for example, right now I can see there's something connected to it. I can right click and jump into that network pretty fast, and also just right click, jump into this pretty fast. Okay. And also when you select it, it shows you something is connected between these two, so you can actually like find stuff pretty fast. Now, what we're gonna do right now, we're gonna use Houdini's shelf tools. I'm not too big on the shelf tools, but it's sometimes really easy to just kind of connect them like that. So we need the legacy Pyro effects. By default, it's not on in Houdini 19, so you have to go to the shelves and find the legacy. Where is it? Legacy Pyro effects. The new Pyro effects actually come with an object. You can obviously change it, but you know it does come with an object. But we're just looking for a billowy smoke. So we're just gonna click that. We get 3 nodes. We don't need the Pyro import. It's just the DOP import node. We don't need that. Also, I'm gonna jump inside this auto DOP network. I'm gonna copy everything. So Control C, jump back up, going to smoke, and place a DOP net. I like working this way. It's easier. You have everything in one container. We don't need this render as well. Just gonna put everything on this one. Now we're not seeing anything. It's fine. We're gonna fix that. Let me just remove this one, jump into smoke, and let's check everything. So we have our object, we create density, we add noise to this. So if I play this, you can see what we have. This is moving around. This Pyro source is creating density and temperature for us. You place a volume rasterize attribute. Like this makes it easier to just go through the shelf tool because you don't need to place all of this by hand, but you definitely need to play with the values. And this is our starting smoke. Looks good. Let's jump inside the DOP net. Doesn't work. The reason why it doesn't work is you need to go to the resize container, go to max bounds and uncheck this. Now it works. I don't know why it doesn't work from there, but I guess, you know, it's Houdini. And there you have it. You have your beautiful smoke. It looks like shit. We don't need it, but we're gonna get back to it. So first things first, when you jump outside, you can't see anything. You're gonna need to place a dop import fields. We are gonna drag this in here to the dop network, add the plus, and type here density. And when you place the flag in here, you can actually see it, which is nice. The thing is, you can actually specifically say which object you want to see. Now, right now, our object is called Pyro. Now, if you Pyro. So if you actually type Pyro in here, it will work. If you have multiple objects, that's the way to tell Houdini which one you want to see. Make sure to write the correct name. I don't like the fact that it's called Pyro because by default this is always called smoke object 1. If you actually look up the node, it's called smoke object, and when you place it, it's just gonna add a 1 after it. I like to keep it as what it is, and in here I just type smoke asterisk, so anything smoke related will come out. But since we don't actually have multiple objects, just like remove this one, it would work fine. Houdini is pretty smart. And I also like to keep the visualization flag in here on the viewport. The reason why I will keep it in here, because if you look right now, there's a tiny bit of ambient lighting around it, so you can actually see what you're generating. If you jump inside, that's actually gone. So that's Houdini's viewport taking care of this for you. You can actually add lights. It works with redshift lights or just like normal lights, and it will make it look even better. So for example, if you added a light in here, you can zoom in. I know it looks bad from this angle, but if I actually change it, you can see it's pretty visible. But as I said, the viewport actually does a little bit of shading for you to actually make it more visible. You can keep it or not. What I would do right now is hit D, go to background, and change this to be dark. It's kind of more visible this way. That's up to you. A lot of people don't like the dark background. I didn't at first, so you know, I'm kind of doing it right now, but I hated it at the beginning. Okay, cool. So what is this now doing? It's resizing your container where you're working with volumes. You kind of need to restrict it to a certain size. So if you don't have this, if you just remove it, this is going to be your container. When you play, it's going to hit the ceiling and then either come back or just be removed. It's being removed. You can actually specifically tell Houdini if it needs to actually bypass it. Where was it? Was it in here? It's somewhere. I don't remember. I don't usually use this one. In fact, I don't usually really do smoke simulations as well. You can go to this max bound. You can either say enforce boundaries, so it will hit this boundary and come back, I think. Yeah, as you can see, like the smoke is staying. So this is the difference between unchecking this, not. And also now we have the resized container connected. As you can see, the container is actually growing. So that's the point of this node. Just to recap, without the container, you play it, it's gonna hit the ceiling and it will be removed, as you can see. Connecting this node, checking this enforce boundaries, it will still hit the container, but it wouldn't be removed. It would just kind of come back. It would stay in the container. And unchecking this would actually allow the container to grow with you. So it's easier to simulate and also probably faster, especially at the beginning, because after a while your container gets too big and you will slow down. What I like to do here, just jump back out here, go to simulation tab, or go to the cache tab and just increase this to like 30,000 megabytes. Depending on your RAM, you can just play with it. I like to give like half of my RAM. I have 64. So it's pretty, it's gonna stay fast, and I'll have enough RAM for other stuff. Cool. Again, we're not seeing the shadow, so I'd like to come out here, check this thing. So it's pinned. Even when I go inside, I'm still viewing the previous network, even though I've jumped inside. This is a really cool thing because now you can go between different viewports, and you'll still see the what you pinned here. So jump back inside, go inside. And let's just play it. This is what we're seeing now. In our simulation, and let me bring it back. I don't know if I've actually simmed this or a while. It is. So let's go here. Just and when I play it, as you can see, moving around, and it's dying after a certain amount of time. It's not really progressing. So if you look at it. There it is. It's a cool look. I'm actually putting a time shift down here because I didn't want to animate it. It was just simpler to do a static version. So, but when we play it, it goes up. What's happening if you go to your Pyro solver? Or is it in smoke? I don't remember. It's in Pyro solver. Yeah, okay. So in simulation tab, you have Buoyancy Lift. If you set this to 0, it's just gonna stay in its place and move around. Let's just go to shape and uncheck everything. This is like the most basic thing you'll get. It looks horrible, and that's fine because we're gonna change that. I was just looking up what I've connected on my own setup just to make sure I'm not losing anything. Yeah, let's look at the values I put in here. So on the shape tab, because shape tab is actually pretty cool. Like it allows you control over some stuff. It's pretty simplified. So turbulence is one of the ones that we're gonna need for this one. That's pretty cool. I'm just gonna enable all of these. You can look up the node, just read about it. It's pretty cool. You can see what all of these are doing. Dissipation essentially allows the smoke to fade away after a while. So I'm gonna set this to a pretty high value, 0.5 for example. And as you can see, like the smoke is fading. The resolution is terrible. I'm just keeping it as it is right now to kind of make it a little bit faster. Now for turbulence, turbulence is the coolest thing. Like it gives you such cool shapes. As you can see, like this whole turbulence look, but I don't want to use this turbulence. I want to use the turbulent gas turbulence node. Let's just place this over there, and we're gonna connect this to velocity update. When I play it, I get something pretty cool. Now it's a good place to actually change the division size. I'm gonna use let's go with 0.05 just to get a little bit better view, but we're gonna actually bring it down to 0.025 or even probably even lower for like production stuff, but this is fine for right now. We don't need anything too complex. So just play with the turbulence values. Like 0.2 worked for me here. For the swirl size, I made it a little bit smaller, and for the seed, just like play with the seed. It's fine, it doesn't really matter. And pretty cool. Now one thing that I would like to add in here, go to the simulation, and I want to actually increase the cooling rate so it's cooler a little bit faster, and I like the look. It's nothing too complex, but it's interesting. Maybe even set it to like 1. It's an interesting look. I like it. And it's fading away pretty fast. Maybe change like the temperature diffusion to 0.5. Yeah, that's nice. I like it. You can like play with the combustion if you want. It doesn't really matter. In this case, it will be cooler. I don't know. That's fine. This is not really a smoke simulation tutorial. It's just fading out, adding a little bit more fun stuff to our store. And since it looks nice now, I'm just going to change this to 0.02. Now let's take a look at the container one more time. Where can I see the container? Oh, it's back. Okay. So gas turbulence. I'm just gonna actually resize container. Let's see what we have in here. That's cool. Smoke object. I'm just gonna change this one to like 5, 5, 5 and set this to be 0. Pretty good. When we play it, it's gonna be a little bit slower since we changed the division size. As you can see, we have more details, and we only care about a couple frames. So let's just wait for it to hit around 40, and I think we can just get out of it, do other stuff. This is pretty nice. I like it. I like where it is right now. And you can just add details to it if you want. You can play with the turbulence. You can change the dissipation in your Pyro solver and get some nice looks out of it. That's cool. One thing that I would like to do in here actually is playing with the with this noise. I forgot to do that. So right now, this is what we get. In fact, let's just take a look at all of our settings. So maybe bring the particle size down. 0.05 would be nice. We're getting more details in here. And as you can see, like this is connected by default to this node. This is how Houdini sets it up. I would recommend doing the same thing, just multiplying this by this and dividing it by 4. Which essentially gives you the space between these particles, so that would be equal to your voxel size. And I usually just copy this voxel size, which is now 0.025, go inside and place it as my division. So paste relative reference, which is now actually the same amount. If you want more detail, it doesn't really make sense to go lower than what you set up in here. So just play with this value. Maybe if you bring it like lower, you get more resolution inside. 0.0125. This is the kind of connecting all of them together, but 0.05 is fine. And let's go to this add node. What I like to do is actually change this curve a little bit. Maybe play with the pulse duration, for example, like the speed of this thing. I think it's a little fast for me right now, so let's just go with like 10. This is I think it's nicer now. You can change the fractal type to be standard FBM, which is what it is by default, but for smoke maybe that really. Also I don't mind changing this. Also before doing that, let's set this to be B-spline. I like B-spline, and I'm just gonna remove these points, kind of unnecessary. I need to select that. Let's just bring it here, and let's just bring it over here. I like the look right now. Yeah. So let's check it out. Play it. Wait for it for a couple of seconds to merge. I would also recommend just caching this out, because why work with just without? We don't need that since we're gonna do static, but if you're gonna go with a more complex look or something that needs the animations, just like, you know, maybe it still needs a little bit of playing around, because I don't like it. The trades are a little too short for me right now. So maybe, yeah, let's just fix that. So go to Pyro solver. I'm gonna increase this to like 0.35. Maybe just being, I'm gonna just multiply this value by 2, so it's a little bit faster, 0.05 right now. Let's just look at it. Yeah, this is actually like much nicer, I'd say. Maybe even we can go like 0.0. Okay, it's starting to look too much like a gas. So 0.3. Yeah, I like this look. This is pretty cool. So let's just remove this. I'm gonna let it simulate to 46, for example, and we're gonna take a look at it. Okay, that's pretty cool. I like this. Pretty cool. So what I would say is add a Pyro bake volume. Now the thing is, by default it has a material. If you're gonna render with mantra, just keep it. I'm not gonna do that. So uncheck this, and can actually in the smoke tab you can play with the density. it a little dense. But you can also do this in Redshift. So I would leave it as 1 or 2, maybe 2, a little bit more. Also, what you can do is in the quick setups, you can say Sharpen Volume. It's a really nice tool. Like you can see a tiny difference between if you look. See, yeah, that's nice. You can get away with a little bit of if your resolution is not enough, your voxel size, you can do that. And also if you're seeing some breakings in here, because this is pretty nice right now, but if you're seeing like steppings, you can also add a volume blur. Obviously it's too much, but 0.005 maybe is nice. It depends on your test. Like right now we're not seeing any issues, but you know, in case you are, just cool. And I'm gonna add a time shift. Let's say frame 36 is pretty nice. You can increase it like 40 maybe. Yeah, it's up to you. Let's just add a null. We're gonna call this out smoke. Now if you don't want to if you want to have a animated version of. Cool, so we took care of the smoke. I'm just gonna place it here. Have our rings, and we have our sun. Like right off the bat, this is pretty cool. Like I like it. Let's make it a little bit more interesting. So we're gonna add our stars. Geometry, call it stars. Hold down everything, hold down A, drag a line so it's aligned nicely. For the stars, we're gonna do something really simple. So add a sphere. I'm gonna make it like, I don't know, 10 times bigger, something like this. ISO offset. We don't even need to change this. Maybe bring it up a little bit if you wanna keep like the sphere shape, but I'm gonna scatter a bunch of points. Let's say like 10,000 maybe. Also uncheck this one. I don't like the. What we've done before, and you might have seen this on the channel, is a technique I really like doing. It's actually selecting stuff based on the camera. So I'm just gonna place a camera, move it in. We're gonna play with the camera, so it doesn't matter right now, but let's just keep it as is for the time being. Jump inside here. Now I have a tool called frame it, which essentially what it does is literally just grabbing the camera and taking care of everything, just removing everything around this. But we're gonna set it up from scratch, because that's like my own tool. It does a bunch of stuff. It's pretty cool. You can select stuff. If you have like geometry, you can remesh it based on that. Everything we do here, we can just like set up from. So place a VDB node. Uncheck this. Yeah. We're gonna go to from camera. We're gonna link our camera here. So this is what our camera is seeing. If you play with this bar, you can actually control like essentially the end plane, and also for the beginning. I don't want to see any stars in the foreground, so I'm just gonna like here. You need to activate these voxels. So VDB activate. Just go to the voxel, just drag it out from here. You also need to play with this to kind of have it a little bit more resolution, and just drag it out just like that. And now you have a selection. For some reason it's not covering the whole thing, so maybe, yeah, just increase this. That's nice. Kind of have to play with it just to make sure it's covering everything. Previews are sometimes weird. So we're gonna create a group. Go to points. We're gonna call it frame. Uncheck this. Go to bounding regions. Go to bounding volume. If you play with this, you can actually see you're selecting stuff. You can invert it if you just want to select the side. Now, what I'm also gonna do in here is add another group node. Uncheck this. Change it to bounding sphere, and I'm gonna select my around my object. So if I go visible, and like when you zoom out, it gets crazy. You can't see anything. So what I would recommend is just clicking on this, right clicking on this thing here and setting it the particles to be pixels. Now, as you can see, when you zoom in, actually the particles are not as big of a problem as before. It's a cool, neat little thing, because I don't like this. This is crazy. I can't see anything. But if I check it, pixels, actually nice. Like when you zoom out, it's still a little crazy, but when you zoom in, you actually see stuff much better. And also, our lighting is not ideal, so I'm just gonna click it to headlights because we just placed one for the smoke. Now this one center, and change it to primitive. So we're selecting a bunch of them around our object, and we also have a selection of. So I'm actually gonna uncheck the invert because I want to remove these. I also want to remove these. So I'm just gonna add a blast node. Just load both of them. You can do it separately if it's confusing, but this is pretty easy. It's working, right? Yeah, it seems like it's working, but maybe just make this a tiny bit bigger. There you go. So now around your object is actually empty, and we can just extend this a little bit more, make our sphere a little bit bigger as well. So let's have more stuff. Oh, now what I like to do just for shading, I like to add attribute randomize, keep it as CD, but just make it one-dimensional, so it's black and white. This is gonna help us with the emission from the stars. And also attribute float adjust. You can just place another float adjust for this one as well. You didn't need to put it as CD. I just kind of wrote it as CD. You can just call it whatever you want. For the P scale, I'll be using very tiny values, so constant, change it to random, 0.0001 and 0.003. Very tiny stars, just for the background. Kind of just trying to trick Houdini into thinking. Because if you make them too big and just place them so far away, even if you have a tiny bit of bokeh effect, they're gonna look crazy and it's not gonna look. So this is P scale. If you don't like just using this randomize, you can literally place another attribute float adjust instead of this, like, I don't know, emission, something like that. I don't know why I'm fixating on this, but you know. And these are now both, actually they're not using the same seed value, so it's nice. And 0.01 is fine. There you go. Cool. So our stars are done. Let's jump back out here. Let's see what else we can do. I'm gonna create the trails now. I think are nice. But before doing that, let's jump into the sun. Now our sun is now very, very symmetric, very clean. Let's add normals to it, and let's subdivide it. I'm gonna use open loop. I prefer that one. I'm just gonna uncheck this hide other objects just to see everything clearly. I'm just gonna add a mountain, because mountain is always nice. 0.01 maybe. I just want a tiny bit. Maybe enable the one light that we had. So I'm gonna just zoom in. I want to see the object a better. Jump inside the sun object. Stay. Let's just. Of course. I'm just gonna duplicate this light. Place one. Select it. Place it on the other side. Jump inside the sun. There you have. Oh. There you go. Now we're seeing something. It's so tiny, it's not even visible. So let's just increase this to like 0.025. Now we're starting to see something. Like a little bit of a texture in here. And maybe make it like element size, bring it down. So 0.02 maybe. Maybe it's too big. 0.01 maybe. Kind of nice. 0.05. I like this. I like this look. It's cool. I'm gonna add a rest. Now, I'm gonna put down a null in here now. I'm gonna use this as I mean, if you wanna like when you want to create the trails, you're gonna need some points in here. So I'm just gonna call it out sun. If you're animating stuff, you can also add a transform node in here and just type the magical expression that's on frame. Very simple, just so your object is also rotating. You don't need that for generating the trails. You can use it. I mean, it's up to you. But you don't need it, and then you can just render this one. We don't need it. I'm just gonna leave it as is. Okay. So RGO node. We're gonna call this one trails. How long have I been speaking? Pretty long. 45 minutes. Cool. I always try to keep tutorials short, and I never succeed. I always talk a lot. Okay, object merge. We're gonna load the star, the sun. So out, sun. Nice. What we're gonna do right now is we're gonna create a simple particle simulation. So we already had normals with it, so we don't need to like create any normals or anything like that. This is also gonna be a collision to our particles, so that's also really important. More on that later though. So let's just scatter a bunch of objects. Again, I don't like the relaxed look. It makes it look like it's not random. I'm gonna write $FF in the global seed so it changes every frame. That's cool. Let's also create density, because you know it's nicer when everything is not so perfect. So just create density. We need to enable it in here now. Since it's equal to 0, it's not going to really have an effect. But if we set it to noise, now we're seeing something. I'm just going to visualize it. So that's the density that I have. Maybe push this a little bit inside, push this back. And maybe also just changing the offset, maybe animating it as well, because why not? And just make it 5 so it's. But this is going to be the source for our particle simulation. The stuff that go crazy. Essentially, it's kind of like going crazy around our sun. It's a nice look. I like it. And this is what we have. So it's moving around, and each frame we're getting different seeds. Oh, on the scatter node, I don't need so much. Just leave it at 100. Yeah, that's pretty nice. So let's add a popnet. Jump inside. What we're gonna do in here now, let's check our source. I'm gonna use all points, so the points that we're putting inside that. In the life expectancy, however, I'm gonna bring it down to 1. So this is essentially 100 seconds. I'm gonna set it to 1. So after just 1 second, particles will start to die. In fact, you can also add a little bit of variance to it, so you know. That's nice. Okay. What I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna add a pop wind. I'm just gonna look up my values from my setup. So apparently 10 in here worked pretty nice, pretty well. And also let's just bring the roughness down. So look at it. It's kind of nice. I like it. And the source is moving around. It's pretty interesting. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna add a pop wop. I want to add a noise. So most famous noise ever, curl noise. We need to bring position, curl noise, and just write this curl noise as velocity. So when we play it, now you can actually see it. It looks really nice compared to what we had. Just if you check this, connected. It's so chaotic, but then you have this look, which is really nice. And also what I like to do is a pop attract node. So we're at position 0, 0, 0, so we don't need to like change anything for this one. Just use a pop attract, and we're gonna set the value pretty high. So in the force tab, just like 40 maybe. And as you can see, like it's sucking it in. But this is actually not what we want. Like this might be a cool look or something, but we actually have a star. So we want some sort of collision. That's where the collision comes in. So just add a merge in here. We're gonna a static object. Hold this thing down and hit Shift R. So you change the way the inputs are wired. it works left to right. So you nice in here. You can also just set this to neutral and fix that. So jumping outside, we have our out sun in here. I'm just gonna add a null right in here. You can actually just literally bring this if you want. That's fine, or you can just like put a null. Maybe first one would be easy. Just place this in here. You can actually uncheck the display and check the collision guide just to see what our collision guide is. If it looks terrible, we're gonna need to essentially use a volume intersection. But it looks nice now. It's good enough. We don't really need to. Now here's the thing. If you want to be really accurate, when we show all objects, jump outside, we actually have this structure around it. And when we play this, our particles might actually hit this. Now, for a static look, it doesn't matter. But if you want to be really careful in here, you can jump back to your rings and put down a collision source. Now, it has two outputs, sorry. Place a null in here, place another null for the second one. As you can see, this is a VDB object, and this one is a normal object, a geo. So we're gonna call this one out rings and out rings. Either call it like out rings VDB or like for volume or for Gribble, just call it VDB. And you can also like change this thing, the voxel size. I think 0.1 is actually fine. You don't need to make it like complex or anything. You can just push it down to 0.05. Really accurate. But then you have the issue of this thing being animated. So just 0.1 actually is pretty fine. Maybe 0.0. 0.07, 0.05 maybe. Yeah, let's just keep it at 0.05. Relatively fast. It's not nice though, you know, it's gonna slow down your setup. It's up to you if you want to keep it. You can also place the same collision for smoke as well. I'm just keeping it as is because we don't really need it. It's not really obvious, but for animated stuff, definitely keep that. So just copy this one over. We're gonna paste this. What was it? It was in the rings one. Yeah. So out rings. Just do together. That are. There we go. Now, right now, if we come here, uncheck the display geometry, check the collision, you can actually see we can't see the second one. That's how heavy the ray intersect is. But if I use the volume, I need to actually set this thing to also be on volume. Volume sample, you can actually see something. The volume is not really that nice right now. So let's back out here. 0.025 maybe. Hoping for, yeah, that's pretty good. Again, it's not really that necessary for static stuff, so I'm not gonna connect it, but I'm gonna keep the node in here just in case you wanna experiment with it. So uncheck these two, check the display geometry. One more thing, this one needs to be using deforming geometry because it's moving around. But again, I'm just gonna disconnect it from here. We just the order, so it's easy. There we go. Shift S to kind of a little bit cleaner. I like the look. Let's jump back out here. Now, this is putting out everything. So we're gonna see like this object. We're gonna see collision, everything like that. We don't need that. We just want to see our pop object. This. So pop asterisk, fine. Now let's just play it. We see this thing. It looks really nice. Now what I'm gonna do right now, you might think, oh, let's just put down a trail sub. And sure, that would work for a little bit of time, but after that, it's gonna go crazy. So as you can see, after frame 12, essentially after half a second. Now, if you remember, we had a lifetime expectancy here. and it was 1 with a variance of 0.5. So whenever a point dies, this thing goes nuts. So we're not going to use that. We're actually going to use a particle trail. I think it's a newish node. It's not technically that new. Maybe a couple versions. Maybe it's new. I don't remember. Maybe it's one of the... Yeah, it's actually since 19, so it's really new. Okay, cool. And when you play it, you're actually seeing the particles, and it looks nice. Like, let's be honest. And you can go to the shape tab, change this frame duration. You also need to change the sub steps. Don't forget that. You need resolution. The value that I ended up using is 12 in here, and probably 24, I think. It's jumping around too much, which I don't know why is that happening. Maybe needs more resolution. Yeah, it's fixed. Needed. That's actually pretty nice. Like, I like it. I'm gonna do some stuff. So the length for start, I'm gonna add 0.1 in here. I'm gonna go to set varying and set it to 0.25. So the lengths are a tiny bit different for the start, and also repeat the same thing for the ends as well. So we get this. Is really nice. I'm also gonna hit this dice button. It will create this node for us, which will randomize it. As you can see now, it's nicer. It's way nicer. It's using this tail width attribute. So we can just now clean our setup. So attribute delete. We don't need all these attributes. I have a preset in here which puts asterisks for everything. Now when I play it now, it's gonna go crazy. It's essentially doing the same thing that the trail sub does. So you need to exclude your ID attribute. That's what's helping us like trail this whole. And which attribute are we looking at? Because there is something in here. It's density. Okay, yeah, it doesn't matter. That's cool. If you want to generate yeah, let's do it. So let's place a sweep node. Let's generate a geometry for it, but we're not going to actually do that for the final setup. So this is not fine. We don't like it, but we're actually going to set the radius to 1. That's how I like to do things, setting this to 1 and also unchecking this stretch. Now you might say, why don't you just use the scale for figuring out your look and bringing it down? That's correct. That's true. But I want to render it as a strand with redshift. I don't want actual geometry for this one. So I'm going to set this to 1. It's going to look terrible, but I'm going to compensate for that with a wrangle. The reason why I do that is because I want to make sure that what I see is literally what I would see without this node. So maybe it's confusing. Let me just show you what I'm going to do. So f at p-scale. In fact, I do have a preset for this one. I can just say p-scale based on curve view, and that's what we're gonna write. But let's just write it from scratch, you know. So f at p-scale. P-scale is what controls the p-scale for a strand with redshift. With mantra, and also I think with karma, you're gonna need the attribute width, I think. But with redshift, you need p-scale. So write a channel, call it chf. And we're gonna say just p-scale for it and multiply this by chramp. The ramp requires a string channel and a float for the x position. So essentially what we have right now. I'll call it ramp underline p-scale, and we're gonna use the attribute curve u, but we don't have curve u. You might have noticed we never actually set up curve view. So what we need to do is actually place a resample node. Where are we with the setup? Let me it. There we go. So here, but we don't need it to calculate the length. Like that's unnecessary. We just need the curve view attribute, and that's fine. And when I middle click on curve view. That's nice. Our curve view, we're setting up this p-scale. So now when I go at the end, it's actually working, as you can see. So you might tell yourself, what was this whole thing? The reason why I set this to 1 is because when you're rendering this thing, there's not gonna be any multiplier for radius. Like what you put in here, multiplying this p scale and this ramp is gonna be your final output for the width of your strand. So I set this to 1 in here so I can visualize it correctly, and then when I'm sure this is working, I'll just come out here to Redshift, say strands, and render it as strand, and also change this to capsule. That's why I set it up like this. So let's actually fix this. Let's fix our look. So again, I'm just gonna, as always, I'm just gonna select both of them, shift select them, set it to B-spline. I'm gonna move this around a tiny bit. I'm gonna add an endpoint, place it right in here, add another point in there, and maybe kind of shape it up to be this. It's a pretty cool look, and just bring it down to 0.005. That's the look I'm going with. And we can just like remove this now. We don't need the sweep in. And just add a null and call it out rail. I hit L2 kind of. And we're pretty much done. The only thing we don't have is like the asteroids. It's nothing too fancy. We're just gonna place a node. Side. Let's just add another sphere. I'm gonna use like 0.5 in here. Too big. Let's add a little bit of frequency. So like 15 would be nice. I'm gonna add mountains up. Maybe a little bit weirder. Let's just visualize this whole thing. You can add a transform node to place it. If you want, you can do it procedurally. I'm just doing it by hand because I wanted one of these in the setup. It was due to the way I set up my camera. I just needed something in the front of it. Right now, where's our camera? We're looking at the angle. Like for this look, we don't even really need the asteroids. But if you're doing a zoomed in version, like the render I showed you, like this one, it's nice to have some scattered stuff around it. That's the only reason I'm setting it up. In fact, I think in the other shots, like things like this, I don't even have that. If you want to set this up, it's pretty simple. I'll show you next. Yep. Let's jump back inside. I'm gonna show you the setup for the asteroids, but again, not really important. ISO offset as always, because we want to scatter a bunch of points. Obviously scatter in our nice little points, maybe like 150, something like that. Probably nice. Uncheck relax again. Don't like it. You can go with the relaxed version, by the way. Don't think anything I say means anything. Just be comfortable with what you like. Do what you like. 0.002 and 0.02, something like this. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna copy a sphere to these. I'm going to show you a fast way, and if you watch the copy to points tutorial that I have on the channel, you're probably familiar with what I'm going to do next. This is the basic thing, and if you want to do a very simple thing in here, just place the mountains up, place the value pretty low, play with it, and you're fine like this, but it's not like nice. That's the thing. If you want to have a little bit more control on it, you want to make it nicer, what I would do, and you need to add a little bit more frequency, by the way. In here, if that you need a little bit more frequency, so something like 15 probably would. 15 is nice. And for this one, you didn't actually need the 15. Like 5 would be actual sphere up there. But for the copies, you're gonna need a little bit more. 15, maybe 20, depending on your setup. Like right now, we have 300,000 points, so we can push it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna create different variations of my sphere. Instead of placing the mountain node down there, because I don't like that, that's kind of good, I'm gonna do this. Okay, so I want a bunch of stones that have different lengths, essentially, or with the way you want to set it up, it's up to you. I want to have a mountain node on it, and I want like different versions of this thing, maybe like 5 versions. So I'm going to put down a for each number. For each number is a really great set of nodes, because then you can just iterate through stuff. I'm just going to rename this to meta because it's easier. By default, if you put down like a for loop with feedback, you get this, and you can just go to the first one, create meta input, and just, this is kind of the same thing, just iterating over a number instead of iterating over, for example, like the feedback, a number of iterations for the overall thing. This is just counting them, so you get like different versions. I'm gonna create a full tutorial for just talking about the subs node, so don't worry about it if you don't understand it right now. Just take my words for it. You're gonna need the for each number. We're gonna talk about the loops in a later video. Cool. So what I'm gonna do right now, I wanna transform it. I wanna rescale it. So just place a transform node. Now, technically, when you transform something like this, you can see actually it's getting stretched. I don't want that. This is the look I want. I want a bunch of stones with different lengths, but I don't like this look right now. So I'm gonna remesh it. Since we're doing it inside the loop, it's gonna do it for all of them. And maybe bring like the iteration up, maybe smooth it a little bit. Yeah, so this is nice. We're gonna change this. Don't worry about it. I know it looks awful. And we're gonna add a mountain. That's pretty much it. So we created this meta node. I'm just gonna, you can copy it or not, just write it from scratch. You look at the final output. That everything is the same, but if you check this, the number, you zoom in, you can actually see that there are a bunch of these on top of each other. In fact, if we go to the output and hit single pass, you can see that all these passes are the same. We have 10 iterations. We don't need 10, we just need 5. Okay, so what we can do here, go to the offset, a tiny little expression for the detail. Now what this thing does is gonna look at the meta. Meta is creating a value for each iteration for you. So you're running iterations in here. So you're gonna have different values. You can read this value from the meta node. So if you write quotation and give it the address of this node, Houdini will also help you writing it. So it just like suggests trying to write. We're gonna need iteration, which is an attribute that this node creates, and we're just gonna put 0 because we're just accessing like it's not a vector, for example. It doesn't have 3 components, it just has 1, so 0. And when you go at the end, there you have it. Now I don't know if you can see it or not, but if you check the single pass, you actually have different versions. Okay, cool. So let's repeat the same thing for the transform node. I'm just gonna copy this, paste it in the scale. Now if I do this, it's just gonna go crazy. I was expecting getting bigger, but apparently it gets smaller for some reason. Doesn't matter. Oh, we're on a single pass. Yeah, it's gonna get way bigger. Okay, cool. But we're not gonna use that. We're just reading this value. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna create a random based on this. So rand. Now it's going to be between 0 and 1, but I want it to be bigger. I want it to be between 1 and maybe 1.5. So fit 0, 1 comes to play. Fit 0, 1 takes a value between 0 and 1. Remember, rand always puts out an output between 0 and 1. So just say fit it between 1 and 1.5. And there you have it. So for the specific settings on the remesh and mountain, I'm using just 0.2 in here. And for the remesh, I think 0.05 would be pretty good value. There you go. Now we have a bunch of stuff on top of each other. Again, if you want to check out my copy to points tutorial, is from the workflow series. I kind of have to continue that series as well. Probably the loops thing I talked about would be in that series. So now if we actually copy these, it's gonna be terrible. I'm gonna save because it might crash. And we just check that, go in. Like, as I said, it looks terrible. Like, we're not really doing what we were supposed to be doing. So what you can do in here is actually add a connectivity sub. The connectivity sub creates an attribute based on the connection. So if you visualize this, you can actually see you have different attributes. I'm going to change this to variant because that's the name I like. I'm going to add a attribute from pieces node. Add from pieces. And the wiring is actually wrong right now. You need to invert it. So the geometry goes to the second input, the points go to the first one, and now when you do this, and you need to change the variant. Now your attributes are going to be between 0 and 1. So not 0 1, 0 and 4. So let's recap what happened. Go to connectivity. You have variants. They are varying between 0 and 1. Again, you have 5 iterations: 0 1 2 3 4. So attribute from pieces is taking these attributes and fitting them between 0 and 4. So your points now have 0 1 2 3 and 4. Now when you connect this in here to your copy to points, and make sure to check this piece attribute. By default, it looks up variant. Now you have different versions. Might not be visible, so I would recommend control middle click here, go to variant, and now you can see you're copying your different variants based on the color you set up there. Yeah, and you can just like change this to patch, for example, if you want to create like similar stuff, but it doesn't matter right now. I actually have a tool called copy variants, which I'm gonna release very soon. I've been working hard on this one, and this kind of takes care of this whole thing and adds so much more, but more on that later in later videos, not today. And the only thing we're gonna do is just randomizing the rotation. So just put attribute randomize, put n in here, go to option, actually go to this distribution, change it to direction, check this cone angle, and rotate it around. And as you can see, we're rotating them around. You can actually use like attribute n if you already have it on your points, which we don't because we're using ISO offset. If you do have that, you can use that. If you don't, you just use one of your directions, like X direction, for example, right now, and you're just kind of rotating. You can do the same thing for the op vector as well. It kind of would be rotating their around themselves in a let's do it. Let me show you it. Attribute randomize up, and direction attribute. Okay, so like when you move this around, happens for some reason. Why isn't it happening? I think you need a surface for that one. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Randomize up in here. It up and position on angle. This is essentially what happens with this. And if you have copies on this surface, for some reason it wasn't doing what I was expecting it to do, but I don't know. Doesn't matter. We don't even really like that. Normal is enough. Okay. So we have our stones, our asteroids, and you can add color to it if you want. Just random from attribute variant. Asteroids. Just call it asteroids. Okay, let's do some look dev. So far so good. Our camera. Now you can just use this camera, and by the way, since it's linked to the stars, whenever you move it, as you can see, like we're moving around with the stars, which is pretty nice. That you're always gonna have stars in the background, but if you have an animated camera, don't use it like this. That just like let them all be around it. Disable the selection based on the camera. It's gonna make it look weird. Let's pick a cool frame. Something like this is nice. You can do a zoomed in version, you can do a zoomed out version. Let's just do a zoomed out version for look there, and we're gonna maybe zoom. I don't know. Camera, I like to change this to be 1080. Save the scene. We're gonna remove our lights. Let's set it up. Okay, I'm gonna just disable everything and Control S. Hit render view. It's gonna automatically create the redshift node for us. I'm gonna stop this real quick. So IPR. I have presets in here which are nice. My Houdini didn't like that. Okay, it's fine. So scroll down here, live sub level updates. We're gonna check that. Go to advanced because we wanna check those, and enable denoising. You can enable denoising from your either you hit O to pop up this panel, or just the gearbox gear thing. Denoise, just set the optics. And it looks horrible, but it's fine. Haven't set up anything. For some reason Redshift is upset. Probably it's gonna crash right now. Maybe something I did, I don't know. I'm gonna pause that recording and resume it. So my Redshift crashed for some reason, but we're gonna now set up the materials. Materials are pretty simple, so I won't really like get too deep with them. I might actually just kind of copy a couple of them and bring them over here. Let's just create 7 materials because we have 7 objects. We're gonna start with the sun, and also we have a smoke material. I'm just kind of naming them, and we're gonna set them up. So rings 1. Let's say rings 2. But we need 2 materials for the rings. I think it would look nicer. We have rails. We have asteroids. And what am I missing? I'm missing one. Okay, yeah, stars background. Now let's just apply them real quick. So stars go to stars, asteroids are there, rails are here. Have the sun. Applying the sun would be a little difficult. Have a smoke around it. Okay. Sun and directly select the sun material. Redshift is not being kind to me today, so I don't know if I can actually run the IPR full time, but I don't know. So for the rings, we actually need a random selection again. Let's just set this to be primitive. Bump it up to like 0.8 maybe. We have something like this. We're gonna create a group. It's gonna be called selected. We're gonna add a material, load the selected, and select rings 1. Add a plus, load the selected again, but add a exclamation. What was this thing called? I'm missing out the name for this sign. That happens when English is not your first language. Exclamation, yeah. So, and we add rings 2. And just connect it in here. Just bring it down at a rest point, because rest position, because it's nice to have rest position. And put down a time shift. Set to be on frame number 1. That's good enough for us. I have another tool called Rest in Peace, which essentially does the same thing. It's kind of packaged up together with calculating like UVs based on moving stuff. It's a pretty cool thing if you want to do stuff like that. Just kind of package these 2 together. It's the simple thing, and you can do the same with UVs. Anyways, let's go to rendering. I've disabled the optics because I think I was getting some issues. There is something wrong with the new optics. If you've upgraded your Redshift, you probably know that they are now using a new version of the optics denoiser, and it's not really working for me, if I'm being honest. I'm having some issues with it. Where was it? Actually, I forgot. Here, yeah. So I'm not going to enable it. It was giving me a headache. So let's just keep it off and run the IPR. Okay. So this is what we see now. It's pretty empty, so let's set up our materials. Okay, I'm gonna pause it because I don't want it to break or anything. Let's set up the smoke first. Smoke is pretty easy. I'm gonna just remove this, add a volume node, RS volume. Connect it to volume. I don't know, let's use 0.2 in here and 0 the other one. Also, I'm gonna use the black to orange ramp in here. Now I'm gonna disable everything. Oh, crashed. Oh, very cool. Okay, we're back. Redshift is upsetting me today. Well, I'm switching to Karma. Yeah, I'm not, but it's bothering me. So let's disable everything, exception of the sun and the smoke around it. So save the scene, run PR. This is what we already set up. So we have this ramp in here, but what I'm gonna do is actually, first of all, bringing the density up to like 10. That's nice, but also change the absorption scale. So now this is actually kind of weird. As you can see, now the light is kind of getting trapped in there, which is nice. Let's set up the sun material. So jump inside the sun. I'm gonna use a emission value. Let's say I kind of actually like 1, 0.2, and 0. I think it's a really nice color. So let's just like use emission weight of 25. I'm gonna change the base color to be something red, just in case we end up seeing something. And fill the roughness. And when I play this thing, it's gonna be super bright. It's not gonna have any texture on it. So what we're gonna actually do is a material blender, and I'm gonna use a second material. I'm gonna set it to be dark like this. Bump up the roughness, add another max on noise here for the blend color. We're gonna change this to be Booyah. Maybe 5, maybe 0.87. I've kind of remembered this number because they were working for me, and we already had a couple of crashes. You don't know that, but this is probably the third time I'm recording this section, so I kind of remember all the values. 0.01, maybe 0. Yeah, 0.1. It's fine. Displacement, change this to be also Booyah. 4, I don't know, 1, maybe even 10. 10 would also probably be. Save the scene, run IPR. So this is actually smaller. Gonna start a little bit more chaos in this thing. Start low clip and the high clip. Might be look, but what I ended up doing at the end is just creating a new material and setting this to be like maybe something like this, very low emission. Another max and noise. 5. Did this for this one, so I ended up adding this one in here, and this one here. Blend color. Actually introducing a third material, so this would probably look nicer. Let's see. Yeah, it's starting to look much nicer now. Let's single pass our noises. But this one, obviously noise is not nice. Let's switch it to boom. This, okay, yeah, this is starting to look really nice, and it's actually very similar to what the sun actually looks like. I'm gonna bring it down a tiny bit. But yeah, this is really good. I like it. This is pretty cool. I like it. Cool. So we already set up sun. What I'm gonna do just before moving on, it's just setting the octaves to 20 to have a nicer look. So these two are done. Let's go to the trail. Also need to enable the trails. We don't need the other two now. Let's set up the trail now. Okay. We need to import an attribute. So either go with user data, color user data, or just point attribute. Both work fine. We're gonna import view because we already have it, and we're just gonna put it into a ramp. I'll change it to be black to orange, and just directly connect it so we can see what we have. It's pretty nice. Let's connect it to the overall emission color. Here, I'm gonna change this. Let me see what color I used in my own setup. I pretty much used that ramp I've been using. So 1, 0.2, 0. So this I used, I think, 0.6. Yeah, and just fill it up. Play it. We won't be really seeing anything right now because we don't have any value in here. But if we bump it up to, let's say, 15, probably would look cool. Maybe 15 is too much. Maybe like 10. That's nice. And for the ramp, I'm actually, instead of using black, I'm gonna drag this black. As you can see, we're seeing something, but instead of black, let's just use a little bit of a red color. That's nice. And when we combine all 3 of them together, so sun, smoke, and thing, get this. Okay, cool. Now we already set up our rings to work correctly. We have the materials, so let's just generate the materials. For the materials, I'm not gonna do anything complex. Let's just set this one to be kind of black with roughness, be like this black. Now one thing I want to do, if you've been modeling stuff, you know, having like these 90-degree edges are not nice. So Redshift actually has a node for that. I'm gonna disable everything, just keep the rings, play the IPR. So far this is what we're seeing, but if you put down a round corners and directly connect it to the surface, you actually start to see. Let's bring it down to 0.005. In fact, since it's also affecting the other one, I'm also just gonna simply paste it in. Now let's just play. So this is creating beveled edges. Now you need to directly connect it to the bump input and connect the other one there. Let's repeat the same thing for rings 1. You don't need to see it here. Just connect it, and there you have it. You have really very tiny round corners now, which are always nice to have. I'm gonna change this one to be copper, so we get something like this, but make it a little bit rough. Or what you can do, which is even nicer, is just connect the max on noise. Maybe use FBM. Bigger. Connect it to reflection roughness, and I like to bring the minimum to pretty high. And maybe just kind of nice. I'm happy with it. Let's just make sure the bump is working and is enough. This place and 0.01, pretty good. Probably if we move it a little bit closer, it would be. Let's see. Yeah, as you can see, like we have a little bit of a bevel in here going on right now. You can increase it, gets it more. You can just disable it. It gets really sharp. We don't like sharpness. Nothing is that sharp in nature, or even in like artificial stuff that we make. So move the camera back where it was. Zoom in on the object. Pretty nice angle. I like it. Let's go back to the rings and just change this a tiny bit so we get fewer lighter ones. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, cool. We have smoke. We already have the sun. We don't have the stars, so we're gonna take care of that right now. Let's set up the material for the stars. The stars are really simple. I'm just gonna copy it from my own setup. This is literally have, but in this setup we actually used emission instead of CD. As you remember, I said the emission. I'm putting the emission through a ramp, putting that into emission weight, emission color, and then emission weight of 20. Should be seeing them appear in the background, and we are. Ah, that's cool. Okay. And yeah, there you have it. We're pretty much done. The only thing we don't have right now are the asteroids. Now, we technically don't need them, but if you do want to have them, just create a couple of masks, as we've been doing so many times in previous tutorials. I'm not scratch, just copying and pasting it. We have 3 colors. We're just using masks for creating those colors, kind of masking them, putting them into the diffuse color, roughness full. We have displacement. I'm using displaced Warnoid. It's a really nice noise. And FBM for a bump map. Save it up. Run the IPR one more time. And this was obviously a very simplified version of what I've done for my own setup, but it just gives you an overall look of what you can do in here. You can just move the camera to see if there's something else that you would prefer. We probably have to double check the circle of confusion for the bouquet effect now. That's fine. Why isn't it running? Probably gonna crash now. Turn off mode. Oh, cool, didn't crash. Run it again. I need a upgrade in my hardware. That's pretty obvious. Okay, I'm gonna get 39. I've used up everything that 2080 could offer. Okay, so as you can see, like the lighting is not good, obviously, but you can play with the lighting. It's not. In fact, the reason why the lighting is terrible is because we don't have any lighting at all. So we're using a headlight. Okay, big issue with that. Set up a simple 3-point lighting, something like this. I'm gonna make both of them a little bit bigger. Should be fine. Maybe have one light for the background. Well, kind of. I mean, our stars have lights, so we don't really need. Check it out now. Let's see how it would look. Yeah, there you have it. Much nice. I like this look. Maybe want to zoom in a little bit more. I don't know. This is kind of nice. And you can obviously focus on this part, for example. Now in my renders, I also had a blue color, so you can really easily change that. We don't need to change the asteroids. We don't. We only need to change these 3. That's kind of why I've separated them from the rest of the setup. So for doing that, one simple way, you can obviously put controls, but one very simple way is just setting this mode to be complementary, and just clicking on the complement of this. So I've done smoke, that, and that's that one. There you go. And great. For the trail, you're gonna this, and you want to both work pretty well. I'm gonna save this one and under another. You can also add, I don't know, like a little bit of reflection roughness to all these panels, because then they're too clean right now. Doesn't really matter. Depends on the look you're going for, you know. Oh, forgot to change the sun apparently. Yeah. I forgot to change the emission on the sun. So we have emission in here, and this one as well, and the other one doesn't have it. I mean, this is also kind of interesting, but let's check it out. And of course, make sure to increase the resolution of your volume, because now it's pretty simple. You're gonna want to have as much as you can, because you know, it's always nicer when it's optics off. Why are you initializing up? I don't get it. My system is very slow today. I think I broke something. Yeah, okay. Here's the render. I changed these colors a tiny bit because I didn't like them. It was green for me. Now it's actually more bluish. So you're gonna want to play with them a little bit, but overall, yeah, you can just use a complement of a color, and it's pretty easy to set up. Maybe, I don't know, maybe change this as well. So 0.2, for example, is a nice color. Yeah, I like this. It's pretty good. Make sure like reflections are working. Make sure you're happy with everything. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So we used pretty simple nodes. We trailed our particles. We used the subdivision, lot subdivision side effects tool, the side effects labs tool. It's a great node. I love it. Make sure you have like correct normals. I feel like maybe the normals are not correct in here, so you should just add one normal just for normals are pretty cheap to calculate. Don't really need to worry about them. And see, probably Redshift's gonna freak out again for me. Maybe it's because we're using the node, the round corners. That's why, because they look, maybe it's too much, too big. Yeah, it's because of that. We need to bring it down. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions for a tutorial, if there's any topics you guys want me to cover, because I've been busy lately. I'm working super hard, so kind of don't have enough time to record tutorials. So whenever I do, I want it to be something you guys like. If you want me to cover anything, I'm working on a new interview as well. So if you have any suggestions, if you have any requests for people to bring to the channel, all of that could be arranged. I hope you like this tutorial. I know I haven't been active for a while now, so probably gonna try to be a little more active. I know I keep promising that, and I get I'm not around. Sorry about that. I will try my best to be more active. And there you have it. Hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and as always, take care. Cheers.